What is up, everybody? Welcome into the post-game edition of Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast, where the Bills, after a very slow start, a surprising, explosive play from the Denver Broncos, come back, score 31 unanswered points, take out the Denver Broncos, 31-7 here at Highmark Stadium, setting up next week. Buffalo versus Baltimore. Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson. I already have goosebumps. That is going to be the game of the week, potentially the game of the year. Yeah. He's Ryan Talbot. I am Matt Parrino. We're brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets.
That's right, Bills Mafia. Head over to Tops website today and tackle takeout for a lot less. Tops website has recipes for the bacon blue burger recipe. You can get 85% lean ground beef for $5.39 a pound. You can get 90% ground beef for $5.59 a pound, as well as Sugardale, thick sliced bacon, and so much more. Head over to the Tops website. Head over to your Tops store before next weekend's matchup.
Listen, nobody reads Tops's meat sales quite like Ryan Talbot getting after it here on this Sunday night. We know the AFC playoffs at this point. It's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans and the Bills and the Ravens. How they got there is a very interesting conversation because Bo Nix and company come out just absolutely on fire. They convert on a third down, and you start to think, okay, this was the storyline going into this game. The Bills give up a third down. There's an explosive play from Nix. They go up 7-0, put the Bills on the defensive from the very beginning. And then the offense has kind of a ho-hum drive to answer that. But the defense, the way they stepped up following that first drive, shutting things down, 29 total rushing yards for the running backs, 2 of 9 on third down for the Denver Broncos. Message sent, and we'll see if message is received. And next week it's going to get even harder.
Yeah, it's going to get a lot harder against this Baltimore Ravens offense. We saw that last night against Pittsburgh, the way they were able to move the ball, especially on the ground with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. But in this matchup today, the Bills did answer a lot of questions in terms of the third down defense, their defense in general. That touchdown pass from Bo Nix to Troy Franklin looked like a miscommunication between Taylor Rapp and Rasul Douglas. But after that, this defense locked Bo Nix and company down. Nix looked out of sorts in the second half, was struggling to complete passes. The run game was shut down. And you know, from the very start, the Bills were forcing these punts, and slowly but surely the Bills extended that lead. And before you knew it, by the fourth quarter, it was all but out of reach.
You know, the miscommunication there, I know a lot of fans were out of sorts on Taylor Rapp on that first play. Thinking about to last week when in the New England Patriots game, when he gave up a big play from rookie backup quarterback Joe Milton to Keyshawn Butte in that game, comes back in this game, and it's Troy Franklin, who we were talking about in the press box. He goes for a 40-plus yard touchdown. He hadn't had to play more than 30 yards all season, really low-key performance. We talked so much about Marvin Mims in the lead-up to this game. He was erased in this game. I mean, if you think about it, the couple plays behind the line of scrimmage where the Bills took him completely out of this thing. I thought defensively in the first half, it was a little bit shaky from Christian Benford. He stepped up, played big in the second half, and I thought Matt Milano, maybe his best game since coming back and really trending in a great direction with Baltimore coming up next.
Yeah, listen, Matt Milano was absolutely flying around the field today. We noted that on that sack that went for 0 yards. The lateral movement was there for the first time. He was spying a lot today, and you really got to see flashes of old Matt Milano. And this is what Bills fans wanted. Will Matt Milano return to form? What does he look like when he's out there with Terrell? Just this linebacker core, the defensive line in general, the backfield, and this was Milano's best game by far. So now you feel really good about that combination at linebacker. You feel really good about the D-line. Like you noted, though, the Ravens are a whole different issue with the offensive talent that they have. Bo Nix looked like a rookie today. The choices that the Broncos made in terms of, Audric Estime being a healthy scratch and the backfield that they went with, the talent levels, 2 different levels between this week and next week, but a lot of encouraging signs. And Matt Milano, by far, to me, his best game since coming back.
If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Welcome into the post-game edition of Shout. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. I want to we're going to come back to the defense in a little bit because I talked to Ed Oliver after the game. Daquan Jones had some commentary on the state of the run defense and where things stand. And I think, listen, this isn't a great run offense for the Denver Broncos. So I don't think that there was some great statement made, but sometimes some lesser run games have had their successes against this Bills defense. We'll talk more about that in a little while. I want to flip gears here to the offensive side of the ball. The way they started out, this was a Joe Brady game plan that was heavily based on the run game. They leaned into the run game. James Cook goes over 120 yards on the ground, and it was like play after play in the first half. Josh Allen, a couple shaky throws. I thought he had Dawson Knox for a touchdown close to the goal line. They didn't connect there, but they believed in their offensive line. They believed in their running game, and they were able to just wear on the Denver Broncos front. And I feel like because of the success of the run game, that scary pass rush for the Denver Broncos, which did get through a couple times. Zach Allen sacked Josh Allen once in this game. Nick Pedino had a couple quarterback pressures in the second half. It didn't really have an impact on the game because of how physical the Bills were in their own run game.
Yeah, I think Zach Allen got Josh Allen twice in the game, but overall, they set up the run to keep the pass rush at bay, and it worked beautifully because James Cook was so productive on the ground, and you even got Ty Johnson mixed in, Ray Davis before he left with an injury. They were all running the ball efficiently, moving the ball up and down the field on this team. And if you can't stop the run, you can't pin your ears back and go after the quarterback. So that was really encouraging to see. They're going to have a balanced attack next weekend as well. But James Cook, we've talked about how great he was this season. He continued that today here at Highmark Stadium. And I expect more of the same in terms of his usage and workload against this Ravens team next week.
Josh Allen was spectacular in the second half. It was pretty low key in the first half. Again, they were the one scoring drive in the first half went 13 plays and they ran the ball 10 times on that drive. So they weren't asking Josh Allen to do a ton. And I felt like he was, a little, I don't want to say anxious, but he was definitely dialed up, didn't have the same touch on his passes early that we're used to, but he settled down in the second half. His 2 touchdowns today passed Jim Kelly for the all-time Bills playoff record, his 23 passing touchdowns, best all-time. He did it in 11 games. Jim Kelly's 21 passing touchdowns. He needed 17 games to reach that mark. So we're talking about not only Josh Allen rewriting the record book in the regular season, but now also doing it in the playoffs for the Bills. And, obviously that Jim Kelly guy was pretty good. I thought the way that he settled in and the way that they were able to establish the run opened things up in the pass game. Yeah. And you saw the play action starting to work in the second half. And, a couple of key performances. Ty Johnson was your player to watch going into this game. He was your X factor, and he delivered when the Bills really needed it. The game was still in the it was teetering at that point. Ty Johnson with a big touchdown in the back of the end zone. And then what did I tell you before the game? Potentially the Curtis Samuel breakout game. He goes for a 55-yard touchdown in a huge moment. If they can unlock him a little bit, now you're talking about the full bevy of weapons for Josh Allen. And I also thought Dalton Kincaid had a good game. I thought he was held on that one play in the end zone. He comes back down this plays that makes a big play down the left sideline.
Yeah, Josh did look a little bit antsy early on in this game. The first drive or two, the footwork, the throws. You mentioned the one off target to Dawson Knox. But once he settled in, he was efficient and he was making the Broncos pay left and right. This comes from the 33rd team, Matt. Josh Allen had a success rate of 75% when blitz versus the Broncos today. It's tied for the 4th highest success rate for any quarterback in a playoff game with 10-plus dropbacks since 2000. 4th out of 140 QBs. So, he's been great against the blitz, man, zone, you name it. And he really did settle in this game. And he found different X factors. That everyone eats mentality was once again proven true with guys like Ty Johnson, who has really emerged as a pass catching threat for this offense. And Curtis Samuel will be the first person to tell you that this season didn't go the way that he envisioned when he signed here. He's been banged up. He's been dealing with injuries. We saw some flashes of what he could do in the middle of the season, though, where the Bills were dealing with other injuries at wide receiver. Healthy today. You saw him running a lot, pre-snap, going back and forth, getting involved with some short passes. And then first play of the fourth quarter, Allen finds him downfield, and kudos to Curtis Samuel for the yards after the catch, eluding a few defenders, finding the end zone. He could be a huge asset or weapon for this team because you do have to factor for all these other players. And, Samuel probably was not someone that was on your radar entering today's game.
How sensational would it be for this Bills team to unlock Curtis Samuel in the playoffs? Because I wrote a big deep dive on Mac Hollins this week and what he's meant. But really, they brought Samuel in for what we saw today, the run after the catch. But they also brought him in because his separation numbers were something that really stood out. And you can use him in so many ways. To me, he is like the ceiling of what Isaiah McKenzie could have been in this offense all those years ago, because they use him on those orbit motions in the backfield. They line him up next to Ty Johnson at times. They went 2 backs with Curtis Samuel back there a couple times tonight. And then he makes the big play, I believe, when he was lined up out in the formation. So you can do so many different things with Curtis Samuel in this offense. And I feel like that's another layer now that if you're Baltimore Ravens and you're coming on the road, you have to prepare for Curtis Samuel.
And this game for the Bills to win, it might have to be a shootout, Matt. And to have Curtis Samuel, a guy that can naturally separate, that would be a big, asset for this Bills team. Creating downfield, we've seen Stevens for Baltimore get picked on a little bit. They have a lot of talent on the defense side of the ball, but if you take away, Humphrey, whoever he's guarding, it might be Curtis Samuel that has the advantageous matchup, and you have to go to that whenever you can. So this could be the start of something great. This could be him really showing that $8 million per year salary was worth it, especially if he can make this run in the playoffs. And real quick on Matt Collins, because you mentioned that piece you did on him. He's a little feisty today out there, Matt. The first punt that was sent down to Marvin Mims. Mims decided not to call for the fair catch. We saw him just absolutely obliterate Mims on the play, kind of stand over him. We were talking a little bit about surprised he didn't get a penalty later in the game with the catch and kind of shoved the Broncos defender's helmet into the ground. And once again, a little bit of taunting. Definitely had his teammates fired up. He was walking a little bit of a fine line today, though.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of who he is, right? Like, he's feisty. After a first down catch in the middle of October, he stands up and does the 2 straps and puts his book back on. And he's very boisterous. He's very outgoing. And that's just kind of part of the Matt Collins experience. And I think they're going to need that next week. They're going to need to meet the physicality, the toughness of the Baltimore Ravens. We're going to talk so much about this over the next week here. But this was a huge performance for the Bills defensively. We're going to get into that in a moment. But before we do, man, 2025 is a great time for technology, all these new things that are popping up all over the place to help us, learn things in different ways. I was amazing, tracking the live stats from Pro Football Focus today, the live pressures in the game. It's like almost every year there's something new for something technology-wise. And right now, you can teach your kids, any kid that or adults maybe even too, with Future Fans. It's one of the coolest new games out there. It's activity-based. It helps kids learn the game of football. How did you learn the game of football?
Yeah, definitely watching football with my dad at home and some of my other family members during the heyday of that Bills Super Bowl team.
Yeah, I used to watch football with my dad and bother him excessively with questions about what's a first down mean? How many yards here? Why is that guy making a call here? Why is that a penalty? All these different things. And right now you can learn all of that with Future Fans. It's pretty cool. And you took a look at it yesterday. How cool is that game?
I thought it was really cool. Different ring toss activities. You had an activity book, a rule book in terms of learning the game itself. Has a little bit of everything for Bills fans, man. And I know you're going to get to it here in a minute, but we have a discount for any fans that want to get in on this. Go ahead.
Big time. So the way Future Fans teaches in these storybook activity boxes is absolutely genius. Instead of trying to explain downs, they have a kid play a beanbag toss game with things like 4 tries and 6 points embedded into it. And then later, they connect those games to football through the storybook that guides the entire Future Fans experience. The dads who invented this have figured it out for the rest of us. It's honestly the easy button for getting your kid to fall in love with the game, and you need to get it now so your kid can experience the joy of what will hopefully be a long Bills run all the way to the Super Bowl. It's only $49.99 at futurefans.com. But if you use the code SHOUT, SHOUT, you'll get their biggest discount ever, 25% off. That's futurefans.com. Use code SHOUT. All right, defensively, Ryan. Did you think the Bills were capable of this performance in the way that they shut them down on third down? I thought that they were active up front. Even earlier in the game when they weren't landing, I felt like the front was at least active, getting in the backfield, making Bo Nix move off his mark a little bit. And as the game moved on, Bo Nix was running all over the place. He was looking to flee the pocket. His final numbers really left a lot to be desired. And that's to be expected. On the road, in this environment for a rookie quarterback, I thought the Bills got things going, and they were just absolutely miserable on all Broncos running backs.
Yeah, I think what we saw today, we knew they were capable of it. We just had to kind of see them put it together. And the pressures that total needs to definitely be on the uptick next week. It wasn't enough, but you saw Greg Rousseau flash. You saw a little bit from Von Miller early in the game, some hits. I think Smoot had one on a play. It might have been actually the touchdown pass that Knicks had. So pressures need to get up there a little bit, but I thought the linebacker play was solid with, the cornerback play I liked a lot too. They had some scary injuries at times, obviously Taron Johnson, Cam Lewis, but batted balls. They were active. They were physical at the point of attack against some pretty good receivers. Cortland Sutton leading the way, of course. But I keep, I feel like I'm beating a drum here. Next week's a whole different beast.
Yeah, and that Baltimore Ravens offensive line is playing really well. I feel like they neutralized TJ Watt big time last night. And that's going to be an area that we're watching all week long. Greg Rousseau leads the way for the Bills today. 3 pressures, according to Pro Football Focus, only 7 in the game for the Bills. They only finished with less than 10 pressures in a game this season 5 times. And listen, I'm not surprised. We talked about it on the preview show. This Broncos offensive line pass blocking specialty, it's as good as it gets. One of the metrics guys on social media over on X, might be Ben Baldwin, I can't remember who puts it out, but they put out the metrics where it takes Sports Info Solutions, Pro Football Focus, and then the ESPN metric. And it's 100 across the board for the Denver Broncos in the pass blocking department. They're just really good at neutralizing the other team's defensive line. Greg Rousseau with a sack today, and I thought he was masterful, not only at pass rushing, winning when he did on the 3 pressures in the sack, but also in the run game and making things really hard when running backs try to bounce to the outside.
Yeah, you mentioned the fact that this running back room isn't nearly as the same or one of the best in the league, but Rousseau has always been great in terms of setting the edge, knowing his responsibilities, his roles, and I think that's something that Sean McDermott has ingrained in all the defensive ends on this roster over the course of his tenure as Bills head coach. We've seen it from Epinesa at times, Von Miller at times, and that list goes on and on. So the performance that you had from Rousseau, it was encouraging. The sack was great against a mobile quarterback. You have a very mobile quarterback coming here next week. The crowd's going to have to certainly factor into this game, much like they did today. I think the noise level here, that got to Bo Nix a little bit. I think the fact that they had become one-dimensional at one point when the Bills really extended that lead late in the second half, that led to some inaccurate passes with, DeMar Hamlin having almost three opportunities for interceptions. I know he didn't come up with any of them, but the last one still created a turnover end down. So, you need to see more of the same. You need to see them up that total a little bit and find ways to really get Lamar Jackson off his mark and maybe throwing a little bit inaccurate, which hasn't been an issue for him this year.
Bernard was flying around today. Couple of injuries in this game. Taron Johnson leaves. He comes back. Cam Lewis left, but I believe he came back or was cleared to come back.
Right.
I believe I'll have to check that out. We'll have an update for you on tomorrow's show. Ray Davis, no latest update on him. He left the game, went into the locker room, another scary hit, a couple of big collisions, helmet-to-helmet collisions in this game. So we'll keep that. If we hear anything, you'll get it first on the Insider text line. You can join right now, 716-528-6727. That is the text line. You get a 2-week free trial, $3.99 a month after that. Text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Beyer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or anyone you know is seriously injured, give him a call or go to litrolaw.com. Couldn't remember the number, but I've said it a bunch of times, so go back on previous episodes, you'll get it. But just go to litrolaw.com. They'll have you covered. We got to get to special teams, Ryan. We got a big problem here.
Yes, we do.
And his name is Matthew Smiley. And listen, I don't think every single thing that happens on special teams can be attributed back to Smiley, and he deserves all the blame. But when it's your unit over the course of a month here, that it's like gaffe after gaffe after gaffe, you just have to start wondering what's going on here. Sean Payton is
known for it.
known for running fake punts. And to have them execute and be that unprepared in this big moment, neither of us were in Sean McDermott. We're going to go back and listen to it. We'll talk to Sean again tomorrow, so we'll ask him about it if he wasn't asked about it in the post game today. This is a big problem Special teams, this game next week, a potential road game against the Kansas City Chiefs, a Super Bowl matchup. It could come down to one single play. It didn't today. It didn't kill them today, but this continues to be a problem. I think back to that Rams game, the block punt that ended up going for a touchdown. That was the difference in that game. And in the end, this could come back to bite him. And I think Matthew Smiley, his seat has never been hotter.
It's on fire. It's scorching hot right now, Matt. And when we're talking about Smiley, the funny thing is, had that fake not happened, we'd probably be sitting here talking about how great special teams was today. Ty Johnson averaging almost 30 yards per kick return. Khalil Shakir doing a nice job on punt returns. Tyler Bass being perfect. It was and then obviously we already mentioned about Mac Hollins just absolutely laying out Mims. It was a really good day except for that fake. And where they were on the field at that time, the down and distance, that was the perfect place for them to try a fake, and they clearly saw the Bills were unprepared, not ready for it, giving a ton of room. And the former Syracuse punter throws a perfect pass. They moved the chains, and luckily the defense was able to come back on, force another stop. But it's just those little things where Smiley didn't have his guys prepared in a moment where that really could have shifted the game, because at that point, we've already talked. They had an early touchdown. If that converts and leads to more points, could have been a whole different ball game in the second half.
We got a super chat here from Jim Payne. He asks, Matt and Ryan, what are your 3 positives and 3 things to improve upon going into the Ravens games? I'll take the positive. I'll start with the positives. And I think we are kind of already covered it a little bit, but I still think the run defense, you cannot underestimate how important this performance was ahead of going against Derrick Henry. Listen, Derrick Henry's coming off of another elite performance, almost 200 yards on the ground. Yeah. But here's another positive, Ryan. Here's number 2 for me. The Bills ran the heck out of the ball today against a defense that, listen, they're not known for their run defense, but this is one of the top defensive units in the league. Vance Joseph does a great job. And actually funny, the broadcast saw a little bit of a disagreement between Sean Payton and Vance Joseph at one point in this game. You could tell that the Bills were frustrating them. And I think that's another big positive for me. Those 2 things going into a game against the Baltimore Ravens, being able to run the ball, being able to stop the run, huge confidence builders for this team. What's your other positive?
I think it would have to be the fact that you can count on just about any player on this offense to step up when needed, Matt. We've talked about it. Curtis Samuel today. No one probably had Curtis Samuel at home on the radars leading this Bills team in receiving yards today. Ty Johnson, we've mentioned him being the X factor, and he, cashed in with that big score in the back of the end zone, had some nice runs, was effective as a kick returner. It doesn't matter if you're the star, Josh Allen, if you're the next man up in James Cook. Top to bottom, everyone really is stepping up for this team, and you're going to need that against the Ravens because, this defense is legitimate, but you're going to have to find those mismatches and make the most of it.
In terms of the 3 things that I think need to be improved, we covered the special teams pretty heavily already. The deep safety play has to be something that they take a look at. That's been a staple of Sean McDermott's defense. Bobby Babbage taking over this year. Hey, shout out to Bobby Babbage. He came in here. He deserves a lot of credit. I think Ed Oliver called him the MVP of this game today, with the way that he set up things, had them game planning, everything like that. But the deep safety stuff, that's always been the characteristic of this defense. I mean, you think about Micah Hyde all those years, locking down the deep part of the field, bend but don't break. It hasn't been so much that this year. There's been a couple breakable, explosive plays that they've had to deal with. That's something that the Ravens have been doing. You think about Rashad Bateman. We'll see if Zay Flowers is able to get back and he'll be able to go. But you got to eliminate explosives against that play in the run game, but especially in the pass game. Derrick Henry's probably going to get his. You can't let Lamar Jackson go over the top of you.
No, absolutely not. And it's not just, Flowers. That Bateman looks like the first-round pick that he was meant to be years ago, but he dealt with injuries early in his career. This year, he's been great. They have some guys that hurt. Even Nelson Aguilar at times this year has made some big plays for this Ravens offense. So the Bills need to make sure they're not getting hurt over the top in that matchup for sure. Special teams is another one of those negatives that they has to be addressed. They need to make sure that they're on their P's and Q's, whatever you want to call it, when they go into this game. Make sure that they are ready for anything the Ravens could throw at them. Hopefully Codrington's back for this matchup. Like I said, Shakir did a good job. Codrington has that little extra spark in his game where he can take one the distance. And it could come down to just the special teams playing this matchup next week.
Yeah, if I'm looking ahead to next week too, another part of it is Khalil Shakir's so big in that game for me. And, you look at that team and They have a really good slot cornerback in Marlon Humphrey. I think that's going to be a premier matchup. Kyle Hamilton floating around at the third level, second level, at the line of scrimmage. He kind of does a little bit of everything. What else do you want to cover from this game?
Who put me on the spot? You know what? Really quickly, I know you already talked about Ed Oliver a little bit in the defensive tackles. I wonder if the Bills did kind of settle in on their defensive tackle rotation. Dwayne Carter being the odd man out today. Had some questions from the insiders, what does this mean for Carter? It doesn't mean anything for Carter in terms of long term. He had a wrist injury. He came back. He was effective in one game, not so effective in another. A lot of up and down play. But for this matchup, at least, it seems like they wanted to go with experience, a little bit more size. You would think that against the Ravens, you probably want to do more of the same experience and size to try to clog up the middle. They don't necessarily have that guy that can eat up two blockers at once, but the bigger the guys, the more physical line that they have on the interior, the better. I think it's going to help them next week against Henry and company.
And I think another thing about this team is, I know they're saying all the right things right now. This is a whole nother level of matchup next week against the Baltimore Ravens. And I know that this performance goes a long way to quiet the immediate noise, but there's still going to be that 30,000-foot noise or belief that the Bills are going to struggle with this run game. And they're not running away from it. I mean, you heard Josh Allen talk about getting thumped by this team earlier this season. You heard Ed Oliver talk a little bit about it in the postgame as well. They know what happened when they played this Ravens team, but it doesn't feel like they're scared of them.
No.
Which, that's the big thing to me. Like, watching that game yesterday, and I remember us watching it at Wingnuts. And by the way, we're coming back to Wingnuts 7 days later. We're coming back on Saturday night, the night before the Baltimore Ravens game. Get it in your calendar now. The event is linked in the description on YouTube and across all the audio platforms. We're coming right back, dude. It's a busy couple weeks for us, but it's big time. We got to go big time in the playoffs.
Absolutely have to go big time in the playoffs. And, going back, the Bills do not seem scared for this matchup, Matt. And the one thing I'll say about it is we talked about this pregame in the event that the Bills won this game, which obviously they did. The Bills were about to get within one score in that first matchup. It was 21-10 at the time. They were driving. They were on Baltimore's side of the field. They got a little bit cute with the trick play. Curtis Samuel pitching it to Josh Allen. Allen taking a sack from Kyle Van Noy, turning it over. And then it was 28-10 before you knew it, and then the game just kind of got away from them. So, you remember those things. It was ugly at the start. The Bills climbed their way back into it. They were missing a few pieces on that defense. Obviously, Matt Milano wasn't back yet. Taron Johnson wasn't available in that game. So they're going to have some key pieces there as well on the defense side of the ball. And offense, I think they were still trying to figure out the offense at that point of the season too, Matt, in terms of, they didn't have that premier player. They said everything about that everyone eats, but they still didn't have it necessarily figured out. I think they really do have it figured out now in terms of spreading the ball around, being efficient with it. It's going to be a completely different matchup on Saturday or Sunday. We still don't know just quite yet.
I'm guessing it's going to be on Sunday. So hopefully it is, because we got that event already set up for Wingnuts on Saturday night. All right, Mark Boom Bouchard coming in saying, everyone listening, sign up to become a Shout Insider. Hope to see you guys at Wingnuts next weekend. Indeed, Mark. We hope to see you as well, my friend. All right, that's going to do it. Mike says, Matt's gloves got to be heated because they're absolutely gigantic. You're darn right they are. They're on level 2 right now. I didn't have to go to level 3 quite yet. For Ryan, I'm Matt. We'll be back tomorrow. 3 big questions. We'll start your week off as we get ready for Bills and Ravens. Thank you so much for watching. See you then. Take care, everybody.